Welcome to the world story about a blonde man who can't sit still. Yes, Donald Trump is back not just to continue his legendary tweets, but this time he wants to rewrite world history on April 27th, 2025, while many of us are still struggling to decide whether to have pizza or salad for lunch. A political game of survival is quietly taking place in the White House. The players? On one side is U.S. President Donald Trump, the man who once promised to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, if not at least in time for dinner. On the other side, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr, a peacemaker so famous that back home, when it comes to negotiating who will do the dishes, people just say, "Call Jonas." But this time, it's about more than just dividing up the housework. This is about peace reputation and not a little ambition to make history with just a few handshakes. So what's really going on behind the closed doors of the White House? And can Trump save the world or save his own political career before the next election? Get ready. We're about to embark on an adventure where global calculations are wrapped up in a cup of coffee, a thick document, and a sentence that can change the future of the world. In the midst of the turbulent days of April, when the world was still struggling with rising gas prices, red stocks, and social media arguing about whether to eat a burger without vegetables or not, a quiet but extremely important event was taking place in Washington, D.C. President Donald Trump officially welcomed Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr to the White House, a meeting that the media called a rendezvous with fate, with world peace hanging in the balance. The meeting was scheduled to last 90 minutes, but in Trump's legendary style, where every meeting can turn into a verbal marathon, everyone was prepared to have a snack and make a second pot of tea. On the Norwegian side, Jonas Gahr, the prime minister, who is famous for his ability to talk so convincingly that he can successfully negotiate with an angry cat, carries the expectations of the whole of Europe, because Norway is not only a loyal member of NATO, but also holds a rather special position supporting Ukraine while trying to maintain a flexible communication channel with Russia, something that not every country can do. In other words, if the world is a chaotic wedding party between two feuding families, then Norway is the best friend trying to keep the wedding from turning into an outdoor WWE match. And what about Donald Trump, the 79-year-old U.S. president who calls himself a modern-day master of negotiations, has come to the negotiating table with a clear commitment to end the war in Ukraine, bring peace to Europe, and if possible, pick up a few more votes for himself before the 2026 election. However, everyone knows that in international politics, things are not as easy as wearing a suit and reading a speech. Because beyond the political chessboard, there are many variables: power, national pride, money, and billion-dollar gas contracts. In short, this meeting is more than just a polite cup of coffee between two elderly gentlemen. It is a game of cards where each side brings hopes, fears, and trump cards that no one dares to show. And it is in this tense context that today's White House meeting could go two ways. One is to start the process of ending the war. The other is to add fuel to the fire that is burning between Moscow and Kyiv, a life-and-death game, a historic gamble. And Trump this time, he's not just playing for himself. Behind the polite handshakes and photo-op smiles are very real, very political calculations. First, let's look at Mr. Trump's goal: to make a big mark on the international stage, to prove that he is not only good at building golf courses, but also can build world peace. A ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, even a temporary one, would instantly turn Trump into the man who brought the world back to the dinner table, instead of standing on the edge of a new Cold War. However, international politics is not a real stage where anyone can get whatever they want. Trump is facing three major challenges at once. Ukraine. President Zelensky says he will only sit at the negotiating table if Russia withdraws its troops. Russia. President Putin remains resolute, like a tree in a storm. Europe. NATO countries both support a ceasefire and sigh, worried that Trump will force them to pay more for defense. If this negotiation were a dinner, Ukraine wants its own dish, Russia wants someone else's dish, and Trump is planning to pack the dinner and take it home. As for Norwegian Prime Minister Støre, he plays the role of a gatekeeper. Norway may not be a military superpower, but it holds the key to diplomacy between the parties through intermediary channels, humanitarian aid funds, and a lot of negotiation experience from the Cold War era. Some experts even joke, if world peace was sold at Costco, Norway would definitely order the combo for 3 years in a row. So today's meeting is not just about Trump and Støre chatting. This is an important test. Can the U.S. and Norway find a common path to bring the two sides closer to the negotiating table? Or will peace simply slip away like a balloon from a child's hand at a festival? And don't forget, behind all those diplomatic efforts are very personal calculations for political careers, for election campaigns, and for the historical legacy that everyone longs to leave behind. In short, if peace were a golden cup, then today, everyone would want to score. But this field is not flat. The White House meeting began with the usual diplomatic rituals: handshakes, flag exchanges, photo ops, and of course, the "I'm so friendly" smile that politicians practice throughout their careers. According to sources in the room, the conversation got off to a smooth start. Trump praised Norway as a great model country with snow as beautiful as a winter golf course, while Prime Minister Støre deftly reiterated his commitment to keeping lasting peace in Europe. But after just 20 minutes, when the Russia-Ukraine issue was discussed, the atmosphere suddenly became colder than a Nordic winter. The Norwegian Prime Minister stressed that any ceasefire agreement must respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Meanwhile, Trump stated that, "Sometimes to have peace, you have to make concessions, like I made concessions when playing chess with my grandchildren." This statement immediately made Norwegian advisors frown, and the American press started preparing sensational headlines. According to several sources familiar with the matter, Trump proposed a 3-step plan: an immediate ceasefire in hotly contested areas. Ukraine would recognize some territories as temporarily controlled by Russia, the most controversial detail. In return, Russia would withdraw its troops from much of the remaining territory, paving the way for long-term negotiations. A strategy that sounds reasonable on the surface, but is akin to moving into a new house by leaving your neighbor's old furniture in the living room. Prime Minister Støre was cautious. He warned that an unstable peace will only cause the simmering conflict to flare up more violently later. And in fact, many international experts are also concerned. If Ukraine is forced to make concessions, not only will Kyiv be dissatisfied, but European allies will also be shaken in their confidence in the U.S. security commitment. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours, 30 minutes longer than expected, and ended with a rather vague joint statement. The two sides commit to continue to coordinate to promote peace efforts, protect the sovereignty and self-determination of nations. Translated into human language, this statement means, we agree that we need to sit down and talk a few more times. And yes, if history teaches us anything, it is this: every time leaders say, we will continue to talk, it means buying a lot more coffee and cushions for the next meeting. The meeting between President Trump and Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr, while not an immediate peace miracle, has opened an important path: dialogue rather than confrontation. However, with so many interests intertwined, so many egos at the negotiating table, reaching a truly lasting ceasefire agreement is still a long way off. Perhaps longer than the list of golf courses Mr. Trump owns. In the coming weeks, the world will continue to watch the moves from Washington, Oslo, Moscow, and Kyiv. One wrong move could spark a wider conflict. One right move could rewrite the entire future of global politics. And what about us? We will continue to update, analyze, and occasionally add a little salt to make the dry news easier to swallow. If you found this video informative, interesting, or just made you smile a little in the midst of stressful news, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Because who knows, just one click from you could help someone understand more about this chaotic but hopeful world. See you in the next videos where news is no longer boring and every piece of information is an adventure.